Instructor Sabalt was in charge of the largest group of multi-world children in the entire school. From all across the galaxy, students attended his classes and learned not of just knowledge, but they learned of each other and different cultures. It was not until the addition of Julie, the first human child to attend the school, did Instructor Sabalt run into issues with his students befriending and accepting a newcomer. Julie, it seemed, was an enigma to the other students. The planet she hailed from, Earth, was surrounded in mystery and legend, being called a Deathworld, or uninhabitable. Instructor Sabalt felt that this stigma was why Julie ended up eating her lunch, alone, in some dark, secluded corner of the common area every day. He had seen on many occasions the young Earthling try to reach out and befriend the other students, but they were all too wary of the Earth child to ever reciprocate the effort. It was then that he decided to show the entire class how alike all of his students were, no matter what world they hailed from. Every world could be called a death world. And what planetary body did not have areas on it that were uninhabitable? When it was all put into perspective, Instructor Sabalt was confident that the mystery and threat of the unknown that surrounded Julie would disappear, and friendships would soon blossom. So as he sat, looking over his class, he gave them the assignment. In 3 weeks from today, I will require a video presentation from each of you depicting your homeworld, paying special attention to its dangers, both animal and geological, he said. Students that share a homeworld may work together on this presentation, but be aware that this will be 40% of your final grade, so please put forth an effort worthy of the weight the grade will carry. And so Julie, who was the only Earthling in the entire school, much less the class, toiled on her assignment, stressing the dangers and perils of her homeworld, as did all the other students. On presentation day, she was to be the third student to give her report. She sat nervously waiting, but she also was very interested in the reports before her. What dangers lurked on these other worlds? She was soon to find out. The first presentation was of a world called Berif, and the 3 students that were from the planet went in great detail about how deadly and dangerous the fauna was. They provided a video of a smallish, furry creature that walked on 4 legs and had a bushy tail. "Watch what happens here," one of the presenters said excitedly, as the video depicted the small animal being presented with a piece of cloth, dangling it in front of the creature. In response, the creature made a hissing sound and slashed at the cloth with a paw, and the students all saw some claws appear seemingly out of nowhere as the beast attacked. "See that?" the presenter yelled, pointing at the video screen. "Those razor-sharp talons were not there but a second ago. If that had been your arm, this beast would have cut the skin to the bone." A smattering of applause and murmuring broke out in the classroom. The presenters, all smiles and standing straight with pride, returned to their seats. Only Julie seemed to not enjoy the presentation. In fact, she sat there with a look of confusion on her face. Noticing her furrowed brow, Instructor Sabalt asked her, "Did you have a question, Julie?" Still with a look of confusion, Julie replied, "But, Instructor, wasn't that just a house cat?" A small smattering of laughter broke out from the students. Instructor Sabalt held up his hand for silence, but there was also a ghost of a smile on his face. "No, Julie, that animal is a vicious beast. It would in no way be appropriate to have it in a household, not if you valued your life at least." Still looking confused, Julie just nodded and waited for the next presentation. As the second presentation began, the students giving it said, "The beast you saw before may have been deadly, but nothing will terrify you as much as what we call death from the skies." They then launched into great detail how the scourge of their homeworld could descend on them from the heavens at any given time, rending flesh from bone and inciting terror into the populace when their shadow merely swept across the ground. It seemed all very dramatic, with music playing in the background, and then the video finally focusing in on the terror from above. A brightly coloured flying creature that had a short, curved beak. "Now, claws are bad enough," said a presenter, "but watch the strength of this creature's maw." In the video, the feathered creature grabbed a hard-covered seed and began to bite down on it. With a loud crack that echoed through the classroom, the cover broke in half, revealing the soft seed inside which the creature began to eat. The class went wild. "Did you see that? What if that had been a finger? Thank the Creator we don't have those on our world." Julie stared dumbly at the screen. Finally she waved a hand at the monitor and said rather loudly, "But that looks just like a parakeet." Silence fell on the classroom. Murmurs of, "She is just jealous," and "How rude," could be heard. Instructor Sabalt was worried that his plan was backfiring. He had never known Julie to be anything less than pleasant. But her behavior today was borderline at best. "Okay, Julie," he said a little sternly, "please come up and give us your presentation." For some odd reason he could not fathom, Julie looked nervous and stayed in her seat. "Instructor, I fear I may have misunderstood the assignment," she said finally. "I was under the impression that we were to show the dangers of our planet, not so much the dangers of our pets." Instructor Sabalt choked. "Pets," he said loudly. "That feathered merchant of death could never be a pet." Julie looked crushed, and under her breath she mumbled something. "What did you just say?" the instructor demanded. Immediately a student next to Julie stood up. "She said my 4-year-old cousin has a stupid parakeet, instructor." The instructor glared at Julie. "You will now give your presentation, or I will contact your parental figures and you will attain a 0 for this assignment." Slowly, and with great reluctance, Julie left her desk and walked to the front of the class. Every eye was on her, and all of them were not friendly. Julie knew that this was social suicide. No one talked to her now. They sure wouldn't after her presentation if they thought a parakeet was dangerous. Fine. If they wanted her presentation, they would get it. Feeling there was no way out of this, Julie began. "My presentation is of the dangers we can face on my homeworld called Earth." On the video screen, a blue marble of a planet appeared, slowly rotating. "In the north of my home continent we are faced with animals that fear no creature," she said slowly, as an image of a small, squat beast appeared on the monitors. The scene changed to a beautiful landscape covered in white, when suddenly the creature burst up from under the ground, sending white spraying in all directions. The entire class screamed in alarm, and Julie paused the video. The words Wolverine were frozen on the screen, superimposed over the snarling face of the vicious beast. "What is that?" one student asked, pointing a shaky hand at the monitor. "It is a wolverine," Julie replied glumly. "They are a nasty animal that—" "No," the student interrupted. "What is all that white stuff?" Confused, Julie stared back at the screen. "What, the snow? S-N-O-W-W." The alien copied snow. "What is snow?" Getting really confused, Julie replied, "Snow is rain that gets frozen before it hits the ground." A gasp of alarm escaped from the student. "Your rain? Freezes? In the air? Like outside, not in a laboratory?" Julie just looked at him and shrugged her shoulders. "Yeah, for about 25–40% of the year, depending on where you are." Silence greeted her words. "Anyway," she continued, unpausing the presentation, "you can see the wolverine is so nasty, it is willing to attack predators much larger than itself." Here, she showed a small wolverine snarling and advancing against a grizzly bear. "What in the 7 hells is that?" a student screamed, pointing at the huge creature made of muscle and sinew on the screen. Pausing the presentation again, Julie looked at the screen, then back at the student. "What? The bear? Those things are all over my homeworld," the student stammered, shaking in his seat. All over? How are you even alive?" Julie laughed. "Oh, bears are bad all right, but there are much, much worse things on Earth than bears." "You must be lying," a voice said, and it took a second for Julie to notice it was her instructor who said it. He was sitting in his chair, shaking with fear. Smiling, Julie just fast-forwarded her presentation a little bit, to where warm, clear, calming water was all that could be seen. 71% of my planet is covered in water," she said, "and in that water are many creatures, like fish, crabs, seahorses, squid and the like." And as she talked, the pleasant pictures of each animal flashed on screen. "We even have what we call seals," she said, looking at Dujat, an alien classmate that looked so much like an anthropomorphic seal it was frightening. Dujat smiled widely as he watched the seals play and leap in the waters. "We also have sharks," Julie said. And out of nowhere a gigantic great white shark appeared on screen, chasing down and biting into the seal in a rush of red-stained water. Fleshy chunks of bloody meat sinking into the depths were all that was left of the seal. Dujat sat with his mouth open, a silent scream on his lips. "Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!" Instructor Sabalt screamed. "But, Instructor," Julie said, "I haven't told you about vampire bats. that rip open your flesh and drink your blood, or crocodiles or lions or snakes, scorpions, spiders? Stop! Just stop! Instructor Sabalt gasped. His hand clutched over his heart. Dujat stared in abject terror at Julie. How did your people even survive? He asked. Because, Julie replied calmly, glaring out over the terror-stricken faces and wide eyes of her fellow students, because the most deadly creature from Earth are humans. And saying that, she headed for her seat. As she walked down the aisle, she could not help but notice that the other students shied away from her in fear. When lunch rolled around, Julie almost cried. She knew that her presentation ensured the rest of her school days would be spent in self-inflicted isolation. As she nibbled at her sandwich, her appetite long gone, a shadow fell over her. Looking up, she saw the seal-like Dujat standing over her. Julie just looked up sadly. "You are awesome," Dujat said earnestly. "Did you ever see a shark before? In real life?" he asked, sitting down next to her. Shocked, but pleasantly so, Julie said, "Yes. My uncle and I caught one while fishing once. It wasn't as big as the one in the presentation, though," she admitted. "You caught one?" Dujat said, impressed. "Imagine catching a beast like that." Another shadow fell across her, with another student asking, "Can you tell me about those vampire bat things? They sound scary." And another shadow, and another. Julie, all smiles, tried to answer all their questions, but there were way too many. When the lunch period ended, Julie was surrounded by admiring students as she walked back to class. Looking out the window, Instructor Sabalt smiled. It may not have gone entirely to plan, but it worked. He looked back to his work, trying to grade Julie's assignment. He tried watching more of her presentation while the students were at lunch, but gave up when seeing what a fish called a piranha did to a large bovine herbivore. He gave a short laugh. "If she survived that place," he said under his breath, "she deserves an A."